police have warned that they'll be cracking down on criminal behaviour during this weekend's Grand National after an animal rights group threatened to disrupt the world's most famous steeplechase.
Yeah, Animal Rising says more than 100 people have signed up to protest over the potential dangers that horses face in the annual racing event. Well, we're joined now by Julie Harrington, who's the Chief Executive of British Horse Racing Authority. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. And obviously, we've had our correspondent Jonathan Swain down there at Aintree. Big expectation. It's a huge event in the racing calendar. And we are aware that there is this group, Animal Rising, who are suggesting that they're going to try and disrupt the race. I wonder what plans you have in place there, Julie, to try and ensure that the race goes ahead without any disturbance.
Morning, Ben, and of course it's a huge event in the racing calendar, not only for the people of Liverpool and this country, but around 500 million people will be watching globally. We've got huge confidence in Merseyside Police, and of course, you know, if anybody is thinking, whilst we support peaceful protest, if anybody is thinking of causing any disruption, what we would urge is that we respect the safety of the horses and the humans taking part in the sport.
Their real concern is for the welfare of those horses. They feel like it's cruel and that they shouldn't be put into this scenario with the horse racing. What are your responses to people who suggest that actually that should be happening? Because I know that there was a horse, sadly, that lost its life earlier on in the week during the meet, and there is always constant assessment of whether the horses are being looked after correctly and whether actually it's too much of a strain on the horses to be put into a scenario like the Grand National.
I mean, first of all, obviously, we'd offer our condolences to the connections of Envoy Special, who's the horse that you mentioned. Nobody who works with horses wants a horse fatality. The huge amount of work that goes on behind the scenes every day in this sport has horse welfare absolutely at the heart of everything we do. There's around 80,000 people who work in horse racing, and for many of them, particularly the stable staff, the trainers, the vets, that this is also a vocation. And the love and welfare that we put at the centre of our sport. And we would, you know, I'm sure many of your listeners and viewers will be tuning in tomorrow afternoon, but also we'd urge them to come along to see how horses are looked after in our yards, because everybody in the sport is incredibly proud of it. And over the Easter bank holiday weekend, for example, we had tens of thousands of people invited in to come and see the horses. There are no other sports that you can get that close to the stars. So it's something we're incredibly proud of.
And I know that
Ranvir, sorry.
Yeah, the RSPCA do work very closely, don't they, with improving the safety and the welfare of the horses. But there are other animal charities like PETA UK, Animal Aid and the League Against Cruel Sports who specifically ask for the abolition of the Grand National itself, because they say that that race specifically is particularly bad for the horses. What do you say to that?
So the Grand National is an iconic race. It is a real test of the skill of both rider and horses. But over the last 10 years, the amount of work and investment that has gone on to ensure that the race is as safe as it possibly can be, while still being that real test of horsemanship, it is unparalleled. So we've obviously done a huge amount of work. Our colleagues here at Aintree, we work closely with respected animal welfare charities like the RSPCA and World Horse Welfare to ensure that everything is safe as it possibly can be. We've adjusted the design of the fences. You know, your viewers will see on Saturday that there is a runoff by every fence. A huge amount of investment in the ground, but we also work really closely with trainers so that every horse that is due to race undergoes veterinary checks that on the morning of, but in the run-up to, we've worked closely with trainers to make sure that the horses are fit and at the top of their game to compete, but also that our jockeys are experienced in riding this course, because, as you say, the reason it is such a loved and iconic race is because it is respected as a big challenge.
Julie, I know
Sorry, there's a tractor going by here.
There's lots of preparations going on for tomorrow. I mean, you mentioned it being an iconic race. It's a race. I'm not massively into horse racing, but it's a race I grew up with my family watching and enjoying. Do you think it would be any less iconic, though, if the fences were reduced significantly, if there were a few less fences? Because as a meet and as a race, it's still got that iconic status regardless. Is it simply the difficulty of the jumps that gives it that, or is it the whole experience?
I think over the last decade, you will have seen that there's been a real appetite to not just stick to the past, but absolutely to look at the race, to look where improvements can be made. In 2012, there was a full review of the race, and all those recommendations have been now put into place. And you know, we're really happy that whilst the race is challenging, it's fair and it's as safe as it can be.
All right, Julie, thank you so much for joining us live from Aintree. I'm glad the winds aren't whipping up there, because I'm sure you've seen in the papers yesterday hats flying off, hair, like...
Sensational pictures.
Sort of that's a spectacle in itself, isn't it? Thank you so much, Julie, for joining us.
I'm glad mine's not flying all over.
Yeah.
Certainly calmer today and will be tomorrow.